What if almost everything you've been taught about hell is wrong? Seriously. What if the place of eternal fire and brimstone with pitchforks and endless torment is a massive misunderstanding? It might surprise you to learn that even within Christianity, there's no single, universally agreed upon answer for what hell actually is. The debate has raged for 2,000 years, and it's more complex and fascinating than you might think. So let's peel back the layers of tradition, history, and theology to ask, what really is the deal with hell? You might find this shocking, but the person who talked about hell more than almost anyone else in the Bible was Jesus himself. In fact, he mentions it more than he mentions heaven. Now, that raises a pretty big question. If Jesus' core message was about love, grace, and redemption, why did he spend so much time warning people about this terrifying place? Was he trying to scare people into following him? Or was there something deeper going on? To understand that, we have to go back in time, way before the image of a fiery, eternal torture chamber became popular. The concept of the afterlife wasn't always so heated. For the ancient Hebrews, the afterlife wasn't a place of reward or punishment. It was a place called Sheol. Think of it less like hell and more like a vast, silent, shadowy realm. A sort of spiritual sleep. When you died, you went to Sheol, whether you were a king or a commoner, righteous or wicked. There was no fire, no demons, no eternal suffering. It was simply the end, a quiet, dusty, and permanent separation from the living world and from God. This idea dominated for centuries. The fiery, torturous hell we picture today, that idea came much, much later, influenced by other cultures and a very specific, very real place. So where did all this imagery of fire and burning come from? A lot of it can be traced to a real location just outside the ancient city of Jerusalem. It was a valley called Gehenna, and Gehenna was, for all intents and purposes, the city's garbage dump. It was a place where trash, animal carcasses, and even the bodies of executed criminals were thrown. To keep the stench down and prevent the spread of disease, fires were kept burning there constantly. It was a foul, disgusting, perpetually smoldering pit. So when Jesus warned people about Gehenna, was he talking about a literal underground furnace where souls are tortured forever? Or was he using the most powerful, repulsive, and destructive image his audience would have immediately understood to describe the ultimate consequence of a life lived apart from God, a life that ends up as spiritual garbage, utterly destroyed and consumed? That is one of the biggest debates in all of theology. This leads us to another major disagreement. Is hell a physical place, or is it a state of being? For many Christians, the traditional view holds strong. Hell is a literal location, a place of conscious, physical torment that never ends. They point to biblical descriptions of fire, weeping, and gnashing of teeth as proof. But another, increasingly common view argues that this is all symbolic language. In this interpretation, hell isn't a torture chamber created by God. Instead, it's the natural and eternal consequence of rejecting God, who is the source of all love, joy, and goodness. Hell, then, is the state of total and final separation from that source. It's an existence defined by what it lacks: love, connection, and light. It's an eternity of profound regret and isolation, a self-imposed prison of the soul. The pain isn't inflicted from the outside, it comes from the inside. And the debate doesn't stop there. What about the eternal part? Does hell mean eternal conscious punishment, or does it mean something else entirely? The traditional view, often called eternal conscious torment, says that the suffering goes on forever and ever, without end. It's a terrifying thought, and one that has shaped much of Western culture. But there's an alternative view known as annihilationism or conditional immortality. This view suggests that the ultimate punishment for sin isn't endless suffering, but total and final destruction. The soul is not kept alive to be tortured. It is simply extinguished, ceasing to exist. Proponents of this view argue that an eternal fire consumes things completely. It doesn't preserve them to be burned forever. They look at the same Bible passages, but come to a vastly different conclusion: that the final fate of the wicked is not torture, but oblivion? Same Bible, two fundamentally different ideas of justice. This all raises a pretty uncomfortable question. Did God create hell for humans in the first place? According to some key passages in the New Testament, the answer is no. Jesus himself says that the eternal fire was prepared for the devil and his angels. It was never intended for people. So if that's true, how do human beings end up there? The answer, according to this line of thinking, comes down to one crucial concept: free will. God gives humanity the choice to accept or reject his love. In this view, God doesn't send anyone to hell. Instead, people choose it for themselves by persistently turning away from the path that leads to life. Hell becomes the ultimate tragic destination for those who insist on their own way, even when offered a way out. But this brings us to one of the most contentious aspects of the whole discussion. Is the doctrine of hell truly about respecting human free will, or has it historically been used as a tool for fear and control? There's no denying that the threat of eternal damnation has been a powerful motivator. For centuries, it has been used to enforce religious and social obedience, to fill church pews, and to justify holy wars. Critics argue that a system based on avoiding terrifying punishment, ISN, is about love or free choice at all. It's about coercion. Believers, on the other hand, would argue that a loving parent warns their child about real dangers, not to control them, but to protect them. Is the warning of hell a divine threat, or is it a divine act of love, desperately trying to steer us away from a tragic end we might choose for ourselves? Interestingly, if you look at the history of the early church, the doctrine of hell wasn't nearly as central as it is today. Early Christian writers and thinkers had diverse views on the subject. It was only later, especially as Christianity became intertwined with the power of the Roman Empire, that hell became a major theological focus. Why? Because it was an incredibly effective tool for organizing society and maintaining control. A population that fears eternal damnation is a population that is much more likely to obey both religious and secular authorities. Hell became less of a theological mystery and more of a political and social instrument, a cornerstone of a system of cosmic reward and punishment. And so, after 2,000 years, the debate rages on, circling back to the most fundamental question of all. Is an eternal hell an act of perfect justice, or is it an act of unimaginable cruelty? And how can the idea of a loving, merciful God be reconciled with the existence of a place of endless suffering? Christians continue to argue over these questions. Is hell literal, symbolic, or just a concept we've completely misunderstood? If it does exist, is it a place of punishment, a state of self-imposed isolation, or simply the end of existence? And perhaps the most important question of all, who really decides who goes there, God or us? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you're curious to explore more big questions like this one, make sure to subscribe.